I always trusted my wife. She visited her parents weekly to cook and help. I never questioned IT until one day I decided to surprise her and deliver food myself. As I walked up to the house, what I saw stopped me cold. My name is Ethan Miller, and until that morning, my world was neatly arranged, stable, predictable, safe. My wife, Hannah, was the kind of woman people admired at first glance. Perfect smile, polished manners, a voice dipped in honey. Strangers adored her. Friends envied her. I worshipped her. Looking back, it's almost comical how blind I was, how willingly I let her shape my reality with lies disguised as sweetness. Hannah had a ritual. Every Thursday, without fail, she drove to her parents' house, supposedly to cook meals, clean the place, and keep them company. I never doubted her, not once. I was the kind of man who believed actions mattered more than suspicions, and Hannah's actions were always flawlessly choreographed. She kissed me gently before leaving, texted sweet nothings while she was away, and came home smelling like vanilla and innocence. I would have bet my life on her loyalty. Then came the day everything snapped. It started innocently. I'd taken the morning off from work. My boss, Marcus, called in sick, which meant the presentation I'd been preparing was postponed. I thought I'd brighten Hannah's day with a surprise meal I cooked myself. Something corny husbands in movies do. Something good men do. I packed a basket, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, her favorite lemon tarts, and drove to her parents' place with the casual confidence of a man who thinks he's loved. When I pulled up, I noticed something strange. Her car was parked slightly crooked, like she'd rushed. Odd, but not enough to trigger alarm. I walked toward the house, expecting to hear laughter, maybe her humming while cooking. But I heard something else, low, muffled voices, not friendly or familial. Not her parents. Voices dripping with heat and impatience. At first, I froze. My brain rejected the sound, pushing it away, telling me I'm misunderstood. That's how denial works. It protects your illusions like a guard dog biting the truth. I stepped closer, each movement heavy, as if gravity doubled. My breath came in shallow bursts. The basket shook in my hands. I crept past the window and peered inside, and the world I knew died in an instant. It wasn't Hannah cooking. It wasn't Hannah cleaning. It wasn't Hannah helping her parents. It was Hannah, my Hannah, wrapped around another man like she was starving for him. Ryan Cooper, a guy I'd met once at a barbecue, someone she dismissed as just a family friend. His hands were everywhere. Her face was twisted with a hunger she never once showed me. They whispered things, laughed, kissed like teenagers drunk on adrenaline. She wasn't helping anyone. She was devouring another life. My knees nearly gave out. I felt the ground tilt. Air turned poisonous. For a moment, I thought I'd hallucinated. I blinked once, twice. No change. She was still there, still tangled with him, still betraying me in the rawest, most deliberate way a person can betray another. The basket slid from my hand and hit the porch with a thud loud enough that Ryan jerked his head toward the window. Hannah twisted around, her expression shifting from pleasure to pure horror. Not guilt, horror that she'd been caught. Like a criminal surprised mid-crime, furious not at her actions, but at the timing. Her mouth formed my name, not lovingly, not apologetically, like a curse. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't storm in. I just stood there, hollowed out, like my soul had been scooped from my body. She pulled away from him and rushed outside, slamming the door behind her, her hair a mess, her clothes barely straight. Her eyes were ice. No fear. No remorse. Just annoyance, like I was the inconvenience. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" she snapped, not even trying to hide her contempt. That was the moment I realized something brutal and undeniable. My wife wasn't who I loved. She was who I thought I loved. The woman I married was an illusion, a mask held together by lies so sweet I swallowed them whole. I stood there, heart beating like a trapped animal, staring at someone I no longer recognized. And while my life hadn't completely collapsed yet, the cracks had split open. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was betrayal with intent. And this was only the beginning. Hannah stood in front of me like a stranger wearing my wife's skin. The woman I married, soft-spoken, thoughtful, supposedly loyal, was nowhere to be found. In her place stood someone sharp, irritated, and venomous, as if I were the one who had ruined her morning, not the other way around. Her voice, once my comfort, now sounded like sandpaper against open wounds. "Ethan, why are you here?" she repeated, arms crossed, chin tilted upward with arrogance, so thick I could taste it. I opened my mouth to speak, but words jammed in my throat. My brain was still trying to reconcile two incompatible truths: the woman I loved and the woman who now glared at me like my existence offended her. Finally, something broke loose inside me. "What am I doing here? What are you doing here, Hannah?" My voice cracked, not with weakness, but with disbelief. "I came to surprise you, to help, to see you. And this is what I walk into." She rolled her eyes, as if my pain was childish, as if my shock was an overreaction, as if her betrayal was a spilled glass of water. Nothing more. "You weren't supposed to come," she muttered, adjusting her hair like she was preparing for a photo shoot instead of facing the ruin of our marriage. "You should have texted." The absurdity of her tone snapped something inside me. "Texted," I said, "so you could hide him? So you could finish what I saw you doing?" Her jaw tightened. Her eyes burned, not with guilt, but with irritation, like I was interrupting a task she planned to continue once I disappeared. "You're being dramatic," she hissed. "You don't know what you saw." Oh, I knew exactly what I saw. There wasn't a universe where her tangled limbs and whispered moans were part of a cooking lesson. I stared into her eyes, searching, begging, for even a flicker of remorse, an apology, a crack in her monstrous performance. Nothing, not a shred. Suddenly, the door behind her creaked open. Ryan stepped out, shirt half-buttoned, hair disheveled, trying to look confident, but failing miserably. His presence poured gasoline on the already blazing inferno inside my chest. "Ethan, man, listen," he started. I silenced him with a look that could cut bone. "You don't talk to me," I said. "You don't even breathe in my direction." He lifted his hands in surrender, but Hannah shoved him back. "Go inside," she snapped at him like he was her lapdog. "I'll handle this." Handle? Handle me? It was in that moment I realized something terrifying. Hannah didn't accidentally fall into an affair. She dove into it, swam in it, and built a world around it. One where I was an obstacle, a burden, a placeholder she hadn't discarded yet. I felt nausea crawl up my throat. "How long?" I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. "That's none of your business, Ethan." My heart bucked like a wild animal. None of my business. My wife, my marriage, my life. And she dismissed it like the weather forecast. "You lied to me for months," I whispered. "Every Thursday, every excuse, every kiss before you left, those were all lies." She shrugged. "People change," she said. "Maybe you didn't notice because you're too boring to pay attention." The words hit harder than any fist. Not because they were true, but because she meant them. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to blame me for her betrayal. It was like standing in front of a burning house while the arsonist complained about the match being scratchy. A strange calm washed over me. Not acceptance, not peace, but clarity, sharp and merciless. The woman before me wasn't broken. She wasn't confused. She wasn't sorry. She was gone, replaced by someone who enjoyed my suffering, someone who treated loyalty like a joke and vows like disposable napkins. Without another word, I turned and walked away. Hannah didn't chase me, didn't call my name, didn't even care. That was the real answer, the final proof. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never was. I drove home in a haze, my fingers clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles faded to bone white. The world outside my windshield shifted into a blur. Houses, trees, familiar streets. All meaningless scenery passing a man who no longer recognized his own life. My ears rang, my breathing came in short bursts, and my heart punched against my ribs like it wanted out. The silence in the car felt hostile, thick enough to choke me. I kept replaying Hannah's words. "You weren't supposed to come. You're being dramatic. People change." They echoed like poison, each repetition carving deeper into my sanity. I had always believed that betrayal had a sound, a scream, a dramatic explosion. But it didn't. It whispered. It sneered. It disguised itself in the voice of the person you trusted most. When I got home, the house looked the same as always. Our photos smiled back at me from the walls. Vacations, birthdays, staged happiness. I stared at one taken 2 summers ago. Hannah leaning against me, her head resting on my shoulder, her smile touching her eyes. I used to think that picture captured love. Now it looked like a crime scene, evidence of how easily someone can lie while looking straight into your soul. My phone buzzed. A message from Jake Reynolds, my best friend since college. Jake, you free tonight? Game on at my place. I stared at the text for a solid minute before typing the only reply I could manage. Me. My wife is cheating on me. I didn't expect an immediate answer, but within seconds, he called. His voice, rough and stunned, pushed through the speaker. Ethan, what? What the hell happened? I told him everything. The surprise visit. The whispers. The window. The scene burned into my retinas. The look on Hannah's face. Not guilt, not fear, but irritation, like I was an inconvenience. Jake was silent for a moment, and in that silence, I finally heard something that hadn't existed in the house for hours. Validation. This wasn't your fault, Jake said. You didn't deserve that. Until he said the words, I didn't realize how desperately I needed to hear them. He offered to come over, but I refused. I needed space, not company, not advice, not comfort. I needed to hear my own thoughts without someone else trying to guide them. Jake understood. He always did. When I hung up, I collapsed onto the couch. That's when the anger came. Not the explosive kind, but a creeping, venomous sort that coils around your ribs and squeezes. I started noticing things I had ignored for months. Hannah coming home late, her sudden obsession with her appearance on Thursdays, her perfume shifting to something stronger, bolder. The vague explanations. The secretive smiles. The locked phone. I had explained it all away because trust makes fools out of good men. And I was the king of fools. Suddenly, a cold realization slithered into my mind. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. This was a lifestyle. My heart thudded painfully as I remembered how she used to accuse me of being insecure whenever I questioned something. She'd say, Ethan, stop acting paranoid, with that perfect mixture of annoyance and pity. And like an idiot, I apologized. Every time, I apologized for sensing the truth. Now I saw it clearly. She hadn't been offended by suspicion. She'd been terrified of exposure. Hours passed. My thoughts mutated from disbelief into something sharper, something dangerous. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with awakening. I had been living inside a story someone else was writing for me. A story where I was loyal, predictable, disposable. Not anymore. By the time midnight draped the house, a cold certainty settled into my bones. This wasn't going to end with tears. This wasn't going to end with me begging for answers, explanations, or closure. This was going to end on my terms. For the first time since the morning, I felt something that wasn't pain. I felt purpose. By the time Hannah stepped through the front door that evening, I was no longer the man who had kissed her goodbye that morning. Something inside me had mutated, calcified. My heart, once a willing slave, now stood guard behind a wall of jagged glass. I didn't pace. I didn't rehearse what I would say. I just sat there, waiting for her like a storm waits on the horizon. The moment she walked in, she didn't look guilty. She didn't look nervous. She looked annoyed, as if I had inconvenienced her by existing in the same house she betrayed me in. Oh, she said flatly, dropping her purse onto the counter. You're home. You're home. Now we need to talk. Not I'm sorry. Not even the decency of discomfort. Just irritation. Hannah, I said, my voice steady, surprisingly calm. We need to talk. She sighed, and I swear she rolled her eyes again. Is this about earlier? I felt something ignite inside me. Yes, I answered. It's about earlier. It's about you. It's about what you've been doing for months. She crossed her arms. You're being dramatic again. There it was, her favorite weapon, minimization. If she couldn't deny it, she'd belittle it. If she couldn't erase it, she'd reframe it until I felt like the criminal for noticing. You went to your parents' house, I said, except your parents weren't there. But Ryan was. Her expression didn't flicker. No panic, no guilt, just a slight smirk, like she'd been expecting this moment and already decided how to twist it. So, she said, you followed me. That's creepy, Ethan. I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound I didn't recognize. Creepy, I repeated. I didn't follow you. I surprised you. I trusted you. I brought you food. I came because I love. She cut me off with a groan. Love, she muttered, mocking the word. Ethan, you suffocate me with your expectations. You always want everything to be perfect, like some fairy tale. I stared at her, stunned. Her betrayal wasn't enough. She needed to rewrite the narrative until I was the villain. So, I said slowly, your response to feeling suffocated was to what? Sneak around and let another man treat you like. Her eyes sharpened. Don't, she warned. Don't make this about my choices. You pushed me away. Ah, there it was. The final twist. Her betrayal wasn't her fault. It was mine. You're unbelievable, I whispered. You destroyed us, and now you want to convince yourself I handed you the match. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed like a judge presiding over a petty dispute. We were falling apart long before Ryan, she said calmly. He just made me feel alive again. Alive. That word sliced deeper than any confession. I wasn't a husband to her. I was a life support machine she resented being connected to. And what about our vows? I asked. Our marriage? Did any of that mean anything to you? She shrugged. Shrugged. People grow, she said. Sometimes in different directions. My heart pounded like a war drum. You could have talked to me. Why, she snapped. So that you could guilt me into staying? Ethan, I'm done pretending. You're boring. Predictable. You work, you sleep, you want things stable. I want excitement. Passion. Risk. Risk. She said the word like it was champagne, not poison. My hands trembled. Not with fear, but with the realization that Hannah wasn't confused, broken, or lost. She was proud of what she did. She enjoyed it. She believed she deserved it. The silence that followed felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Then she said something that sealed her fate in my soul. You'll get over it. For words. For little blades that carved my heart into ash. I stared at her, seeing not my wife, but a stranger who happened to share her face. You're right, I said softly. I will. Her smirk returned. She thought she'd won. She had no idea she had just awakened something she couldn't control. I didn't sleep that night. Sleep belongs to people whose worlds still make sense. Mine had been split open like a carcass, and I was left sifting through the bones, trying to understand what I'd been living with. Hannah went to bed without another word, as if our marriage were a TV show she'd gotten bored of halfway through. She didn't try to comfort me, didn't apologize, didn't even acknowledge the magnitude of what she had done. She brushed her teeth, tied her hair, slipped beneath the covers, and turned away from me like I was an afterthought. At around 3 a.m., I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the ring on my finger. It felt heavier than gold should ever feel, like a shackle forged from promises I now realized only I had ever intended to keep. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. My house, our house, felt like a museum of lies. My mind went to war with itself. Part of me wanted answers. Part of me wanted revenge. And a part of me, the quietest but the one that finally started to win, wanted freedom. Around dawn, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart jumped in my throat. I opened the door, and there stood Jake, holding 2 coffees like he knew I hadn't slept. He took one look at me and didn't bother asking how I was. That bad? He asked quietly. I nodded. Jake stepped inside, scanned the house like he was expecting the walls themselves to whisper betrayal. He sat down and waited. Somehow, he knew I needed space to spill everything again. Not the facts, but the fallout. She didn't apologize, I said. She didn't care. Jake leaned forward. Ethan, you need to understand something. Some people don't feel guilt. They feel inconvenience. They don't regret what they do. They regret getting confronted. Those words landed inside me like truth that had been waiting for permission to surface. Hannah wasn't sorry because Hannah didn't believe she'd done anything wrong. And suddenly, everything made sense. The lies, the indifference, the smugness. She didn't see this as betrayal. She saw it as evolution. Jake placed his hand on the table. You need to protect yourself. Emotionally, financially, legally. Don't let her control the story. That last sentence hit me harder than anything else. Control the story. For months, maybe longer, Hannah had been the author of my life. She decided what I knew, what I believed, how I viewed myself. Every lie she told wasn't just to hide her affair. It was to shape my reality. But now I had the pen. I'm going to talk to a lawyer, I said, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. Jake nodded. Good. Don't wait. The longer you give her, the more she'll rewrite the ending. Before he left, he handed me something, a small booklet he always carried, a notepad. Write it down, he said. Everything you feel, everything she says. Pain turns into power when it has a record. After he left, I finally walked into the bedroom. Hannah was awake, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. She didn't even glance at me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't pretend to care. And that was when I knew the truth carved in stone. Her betrayal wasn't the moment she touched him. It was the moment she stopped seeing me as human. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply looked at her and said, tomorrow, we're discussing the divorce. She blinked, shocked. Not hurt, not heartbroken, shocked as if she never believed I'd act. You're serious? She asked, voice sharp. For the first time in a long time, I replied yes. Her stunned silence tasted better than any apology ever could. I walked out of the room, leaving behind a version of myself that died at that window. A new one was emerging, not fueled by love, not fueled by anger, fueled by something far more dangerous. Clarity. The next morning didn't feel like waking up. It felt like rising from the wreckage of a plane crash. My body was intact, but nothing around me resembled the world I once knew. The air was colder. The walls felt narrower. Even sunlight seemed hostile, like it was exposing things I once ignored. I heard Hannah in the kitchen, humming softly as she made her coffee, as if yesterday's detonation of our marriage had been a minor inconvenience. Her voice floated down the hallway, like poison disguised as a lullaby. I took a deep breath and walked in. She didn't turn to face me. She didn't greet me. She didn't even pretend to feel awkward. She sipped her coffee and scrolled through her phone, one leg casually crossed over the other. The audacity was staggering. We need to talk, I said. Her eyes flicked up lazily, then back to her screen. About what? She said, as though she truly had no idea. The divorce, I answered. She froze. Not because she regretted anything. Hannah didn't do regret, but because she hadn't planned for me to be the one ending things. In her warped fantasy, she was the chooser, the breaker, the star of her own twisted storyline. She set her mug down slowly, finally giving me her full attention. Ethan, she said, her tone sugar-coated with condescension, don't be ridiculous. You're not thinking clearly. There was the gaslighting, the manipulation, the attempt to drag me back into the illusion. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't a participant anymore. I was a witness, an observer, a man disassembling the lie piece by piece. No, I said, for the first time in years, I'm thinking perfectly. She scoffed. You're just going to throw everything away because you think something happened? Think. She actually said think. I saw you. I reply, my voice steady. I heard you. I watched you throw our marriage onto the floor like trash. Hannah didn't flinch. Instead, she shrugged. Ethan, you don't get it. We were done long before Ryan. You just didn't notice. A familiar burn rose in my chest, but now it wasn't pain. It was enlightenment. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't been tempted. She had been waiting for an excuse to rewrite history. So that justifies betraying me? I asked. She leaned back, arms crossed, smirking like she was explaining something obvious to a slow child. What was I supposed to do? Stay with someone who bored me? Someone who wanted a quiet life? Ryan makes me feel alive. There was again alive. The word she used like a trophy. The truth hit me with brutal clarity. She didn't fall for Ryan. She fell for the version of herself she saw reflected in his eyes. Reckless, desired, irresponsible, free of consequences. She wanted an audience, not a partner. You don't love him, I said. You love the fantasy of who you think you are with him. Her expression flickered, just once. It was small, but I saw it. A crack. Then she laughed. A cold, sharp sound devoid of humanity. I don't need your psychoanalysis, she snapped. You're not some genius, Ethan. You're just ordinary, and I refuse to live an ordinary life. It should have hurt. It didn't, because ordinary didn't shatter lives. Ordinary didn't betray vows. Ordinary didn't need constant attention to validate its existence. Extraordinary does. Extraordinarily selfish. Extraordinarily destructive. Extraordinarily hollow. You're right, I said calmly. I'm ordinary, but ordinary men build futures. Extraordinary liars burn them. Her smile faltered. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so she couldn't mistake my resolve. You wanted excitement? Here it is. The thrill of losing everything you took for granted. Her jaw clenched. For the first time since this nightmare began, Hannah realized the ground beneath her wasn't stable, and she wasn't the one controlling it anymore. Ethan, don't do this, she said, voice trembling slightly. But it was too late. I wasn't hers to control anymore. I already did, I replied, walking past her. As I left the kitchen, I heard the sound of her mug shattering behind me. Not an accident, a reaction, the first crack in her confidence. And suddenly, I understood something powerful. She wasn't fearless. She was terrified of losing the audience for her performance. Now the performance was ending, and she wasn't the one closing the curtain. The days that followed were unlike anything I had experienced before. They were quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. The charged kind, the kind that settles over a battlefield once both armies finally understand that war is inevitable. Hannah moved around the house like a wild animal pretending to be tame, watching me from the corners of her eyes, waiting to see if my resolve would crack. It didn't. I contacted an attorney the next morning, Laura Hensley, a sharp, composed woman who spoke with the calm certainty of someone who'd ripped illusions apart for a living. When I described Hannah's affair, she didn't gasp, didn't pity me, didn't soften her tone. Good men think loyalty protects them, she said. It doesn't. Documentation does. It was the first time anyone acknowledged what Hannah did without telling me to forgive, forget, or try to work it out. Laura treated my betrayal like what it was, evidence, not emotion. It felt like oxygen. When I returned home after the meeting, Hannah was waiting by the door, arms folded, foot tapping, a queen demanding tribute. What's going on with you? She asked, voice guarded but trembling at the edges. You're acting weird. Weird. Translation, I wasn't crumbling. I hung my jacket without looking at her. I met with a lawyer. Her face drained. Why would you do that? Because actions have consequences, I said. Hannah scoffed, but it was weak, like her confidence had been dipped in acid overnight. You're overreacting, she snapped. People make mistakes. No, I corrected, turning to face her. Mistakes are accidents. You made decisions. Her eyes flickered, panic, anger, disbelief, all fighting for dominance. You can't just walk away from our marriage, she hissed. My laugh startled even me. You walked away months ago. I'm just catching up. For the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't have a comeback. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her jaw locking into place like she was chewing on the taste of losing control. Later that night, I discovered something I never expected. My phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. Ryan, we should talk. I stared at it, the audacity staggering. Hannah had infected him with her delusion. He thought he was part of this negotiation. My thumb hovered over the screen, but Jake called before I responded. Don't talk to him. Jake warned the moment I answered. Men like that don't want peace. They want justification. He was right. Ryan didn't want closure. He wanted permission to keep believing he was the hero of a love story instead of a parasite feeding on someone else's life. I blocked Ryan without replying. Later, Hannah cornered me in the hallway. Did you block him? She demanded, voice cracking like thin glass. Yes. You had no right. The laugh that broke out of me wasn't loud. It was lethal. No right. I repeated. You destroyed our marriage, lied to me for months, humiliated me, blamed me, and now you're upset that I blocked the man you were. I stopped myself. I refused to give her the satisfaction of reacting emotionally. You don't get to dictate my decisions anymore. She stared at me, her breath uneven. For the first time, I saw something flicker behind her eyes that wasn't arrogance or contempt. Fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. That night, she tried a new tactic. She cooked dinner. She lit candles. She wore perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. She looked at me with eyes full of artificial softness. "Can we talk?" she asked gently. "No," I answered. Her face fell. Not tragically, strategically. She wasn't hurt. She was recalculating. "You're being impossible," she muttered. "Good," I replied. "It means you can't predict me anymore." Control wasn't her language. It was her entire identity. Now, I had severed her power source. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't the one steering. And she knew it. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was something close to peace. The kind of peace that comes after a storm destroys everything weak, leaving behind only what's strong enough to rebuild. Hannah wasn't in the house. Her car was gone. Her perfume no longer lingered in the hallway. For a moment, I wondered if she had finally fled to Ryan's arms, convinced she had won whatever twisted game she thought we were playing. Then I realized something. I didn't care where she was. That revelation hit me harder than any argument or confession. The weight of her absence wasn't painful. It was liberating. My heart didn't sink. My stomach didn't twist. The silence wasn't threatening anymore. It was mine. A notification buzzed on my phone. A message from an unknown number. "Unknown, you made a mistake leaving her. She didn't deserve this." Ryan, still trying to be relevant, still desperate for validation. I deleted the message without reading the rest. Weak men need witnesses. Strong men need none. Later that afternoon, Hannah burst through the door like a tornado made of perfume and desperation. She looked disheveled, hair messy, eyes wild. Not for grief, from losing control. "We need to talk," she demanded. I sat at the dining table, calm, unmoved. "No, Hannah, you need to listen." Her mouth opened, but no words escaped. She wasn't used to silence being her punishment. "I want you out," I said, sliding a folder across the table. Documents, timelines, proof, everything Laura helped me prepare. "The lawyer will contact you. I'm filing for divorce." Her face contorted, not with sadness, but outrage. "Ethan, you're being insane," she shouted. "Ryan and I were just—" "Stop," I said. "Don't insult both of us by pretending this was a momentary lapse. You built an entire fantasy world where I didn't exist." Her lips trembled, not with remorse, with fury. "You think you're better than me?" she spat. "You think walking away makes you strong?" "No," I replied. "Walking away makes me free." She blinked, confused, unprepared. She had expected anger, begging, a fight she could control. But there was nothing left for her to manipulate. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Maybe," I said, "but at least the regret will be mine, not something you handed me." She stumbled back a step, stunned. The look she gave me wasn't hatred. It was recognition. For the first time since the day I caught her, she realized I wasn't broken. I was done. She stormed out, slamming the door, so hard a picture frame rattled off the wall and shattered. It felt symbolic, alive falling for the last time. Weeks passed. Papers were signed. Accounts separated. Her name, once something that tasted like home, now meant nothing more than a story I survived. The pain didn't vanish overnight. Betrayal leaves residue. But slowly, I reclaimed pieces of myself I didn't even know Hannah had stolen. I started sleeping again, not like a man waiting for disaster, but like someone who knows daylight won't lie to him. Jake checked in often. Laura handled the legal battlefield like a surgeon. My life, once held hostage by illusions, began to breathe again. One evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sun melt into the horizon, and I realized something. I hadn't lost a wife. I had lost a mirror someone else used to measure their ego. I had lost a prison built from promises only I cared about. I hadn't been abandoned. I had been released. Conclusion. From this nightmare, I learned truths no one teaches you. Loyalty means nothing to a disloyal person. Love cannot survive in a house built on lies. The right decision is rarely painless, but it's always necessary. If you're ever standing where I stood, at the edge of deception, staring into the ruins of a life you thought was real, remember this. You don't lose when someone betrays you. You lose when you stay. I walked away. That was my victory. And finally, my freedom. The end.